So it's windy as all get out today, which all of you up here in this area understand how hard it is to work in it, number one. Number two, how hard it is on the plants. So, it is time to start planting your plants. I have an area in the back that has fencing. See this? So it blocks some of the wind from the areas that are the worst. I went ahead and transplanted my soft leaf squash, right? It's behind me. Now I look at it. It's looking kind of sad, right? It will do that because it's going from an internal area that it's mostly protected to an outdoor area with this wind, full sun. Of course, my area gets partial shade at the end of the day, but full sun in comparison to a light over up and above it. The sun up here is very intense because we're so high up. So it's struggling a little bit, and it will. Just make sure to water twice a day. Make sure to do that. That's the most important thing. And the best thing to do when you're setting up irrigation, or even if you're hand watering, is make sure you put like a small ring around the plant so that it's a well. So when you water it, the water will seep into the circle well around the plant and keep it moist and not just go over the top of it and run off. I think that's a mistake with irrigation that a lot of people make, even hand watering. They don't have a well for that water to reside. So you want to really try to do that, especially right now. They're really sensitive, and again, the heat, the wind, they really need to have their water be available to them. So I would water twice a day. I actually have the irrigation set on 5 minutes, 2 times a day out here in the field. And we adjust every year based on how the plants are doing and the weather, because it's different every year. It's, this time last year we were just getting over a major snowstorm. So you just have to kind of watch your plants a little bit. So I also wanted to talk about the difference between summer and winter squash. So someone sent me a question about squash in general. So I think a lot of people don't eat all the different types of squash, so they don't understand much about them. So summer squash is things like zucchini, yellow squash, the ones that grow quickly in the summer and come up first. And those are the ones that, spiraling and that type of thing is how you use them. Most people are using them these days. So those squash don't store well, right? So you have to eat them pretty quickly or they get soggy and rot. Winter squash is actually a squash that comes to fruition later in the season, in the fall, right? In the cooler temps is when it's fully grown and ready to be picked. And that's the squash that you can store for up to a year. So we've stored ours for a year and longer even. So it stores really well. It needs to be in a very cool and dark place after it's harvested immediately. Usually harvest begins in August, September. It depends on when you plant and where you're located. But once you pick them from the vine, you need to store them immediately in a cool and dark temperature in order to save them for long term. So winter squash are great nutritionally because they can be eaten as a carbohydrate that is quite good for you and not sugary. So in other words, I'm sure you see a lot of keto diets these days. Those include squashes, and the squashes they include are things like butternut, acorn, spaghetti squash. Those are ones that are considered winter squashes. Those are the ones that store well. So if you're trying to decide on squash and you're wanting to start to store food or have things available longer than immediately in June and July, try the winter squashes. Butternut Waltham is one of the best ones to grow. Butternut squash soup, so many people love it. It's so easy to make. I'll show you how to make it. I'll post a video as soon as the squash become available, or I still have my squash from last year that's fresh that I can make that with. So I'll think about putting a video on how to do that. Easy to do. All squashes, winter squashes that are hard, can be cut in half, olive oil on them, laid flat on their bellies in the oven, cook for 45 minutes, and they're soft as all can be, and you can do whatever you want to with them after that. Another one of my favorite is delicata. It's the one, that little one years ago that I posted. It's actually one of the squash that's used for pumpkin pie. It has a very sweet flavor to it. Now that one has a little more sugar content to it, so I wouldn't consider that a keto squash. but it is delicious. You can actually utilize it at a meal for a side dish. I cook it down with a little bit of butter and brown sugar and cinnamon, and it's so good. It's like having pumpkin pie for dinner. So that's a really good one. Delicata is another one you might want to look at. It's a fun one. It's small, it's striped, it's easy to cook, it's thinner, it's got a thinner wall, so it's quicker to cook. And it's like a dessert, especially for kids. They love it. When you put cinnamon on it, it's just like having dessert. So there's a lot of winter squashes, but those are the main ones that most people do. Spaghetti, butternut, delicata. Let's see, what else did I plant? So those are the main ones. I just wanted to talk about the difference between summer and winter squash and let you know that planting right now up here is okay, but you've got to watch your water and watch your temperatures. Now, for some crazy reason, we have this drop that happens sometimes. You're going to want to cover these. You know, you can even cover them with a light sheet. You just want to make sure to brick them down because of the wind. So if something happens and we're going to get semi-freezing temperatures at night, like if it's below 40, you want to come out, put a sheet over top, put some bricks on the corners, and then make sure in the morning when the sun comes out, you pull that sheet. Because another thing that can happen is the heat. You will not believe the intensity of heat from the sun up here now. It will fry the crap out of them. So you got to babysit this stuff right now on either end to make sure that you don't destroy them. It's easy to do up here. That's why high altitude growing is such a popular subject. Okay, if you have any questions, let me know.